Hey everyone, Mango7Roll here. How we doing today? Welcome to another episode of Epic 7, and this is Patch Day. Kind of. It is Balance Adjustment Preview Day, my favorite ever. Have not looked at these. We'll be going into them blind as we always do. I'm personally always hoping for Araminta, but I think her time has passed. I don't think that's happening. As for RGBs, they usually do one RGB, one ML5, and then one or two 4-stars as well, right? So RGB, it's got to be Haste time now, right? Like Haste has got to come sometime. Outside of Haste, maybe somebody like Bologna, I don't know, somebody like bringing them back fresh into the meta. As for ML5s, I personally think that the Meg Chloe really needs some help right now. I don't know if she should revive with like immortality or revive with skill nullifier or revive with combat readiness, but I definitely think she needs something. But they've been doing recent stuff lately, so the only thing I can think of that hasn't, like, I don't see anywhere, I literally actually haven't seen this person once, is Briar Iseria, so that's another option. I would way rather have Meg Chloe though, considering I have Meg Chloe. As for 4-stars, I would love to see something like a we saw Maya last time, which was a knight, so I want to say, who could it be? Who could it be? I'm trying to think of who needs a little bit of a boost. What element needs a boost? What element needs a boost? Maybe Maya already got a change. Did Armin get a change? Maybe Armin? I don't know. I would like to see like another bruiser style. Anyway, enough guessing. It's been 2 minutes of guessing. Let's scroll. So let's move this up here, I guess. Feedback. Oh, Briar Witch Iseria. Spec Sez. Khawazu, why not Kawana? Yuna, Haste. Okay. Top to bottom, Mango. 5-star, Briar Witch Iseria is expected. Specimen Sez, not sure what to think about that. I've never really seen him used, but then again, he's used on offense. Kawerik, yeah, that makes sense. Haste makes sense. Yuna really makes sense. I think Yuna should be more of a mainstay to the game, at least have a niche, and she just doesn't have that right now. Spirit Tieria would be nice if she got a buff of sorts, specifically for early game, like if you could make her farming a little better. I farmed with her recently on one of my newer accounts and she is insane for it, but just like a little bit better would be nice. Silk as well, that makes a lot of sense. Khawazu, we're so close to the good fire units, you know? We got 2 fire 5-stars and Khawazu, and we're just barely missing Kawana. And then Captain Rikoris. Interesting. I think Captain Rikoris is a pretty good unit as well. So let's take a look here. And Flower Shower. Okay, so Briar Witch Iseria. Honestly, I don't know what Briar Witch Iseria does. I've literally just never, ever seen her. Okay, so Witch's Curse. Increases hit chance by 35%. Upon receiving lethal damage, grants immortality to the caster for 1 turn. Mortality effects can only be activated once every 5 turns. Okay, so it gives her like a Charon style immortality buff. Pretty cool, just in time to get Oblivioned, lol. That's a pretty good buff though, right? Also up to 100% chance. That makes sense. I really hate stuff that isn't 100%, especially if that's like what they do, right? If that's what they're meant to do. So that's pretty cool as well. So that gives her a little bit of survivability and also 100% chance. So Briar Witch Iseria will be adjusted so that she's more influential in the battlefield. I gotta make this just like a little bit better so you can see. There, we'll go here. I'll try not to scroll anything off the area. First, Witch's Curse will be modified to grant immortality for 1 turn. Make her more likely to hold out of the initial phase of the battle. Additionally, it'll have a 100% chance to decrease attack and make things unable to be buffed, dragging opponents into disadvantageous situations at a higher chance. Okay, so that's pretty cool. I don't know if that's enough, but that immortality is always fantastic. But one of the reasons why it's so good on Charon is because he just destroys you after, right? So we'll see how this goes. And now for Sez. Dreamy Iron Mace. Attacks with an Iron Mace with a 50% chance to stun. Upon successfully stunning the enemy, increases combat readiness of the caster by 25%. So a self buff to CR that's pretty sweet. Attacks all enemies with Evil Claws with a 60% up from 45% and just damage dealt increase. Did he need a damage dealt increase? I felt like he did bajillions of damage when he hit. If the skill is available when an ally except for the caster is attacked, there's a 20% chance to attack? Why? I mean, like, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just like, thematically, why? Skill is available when an ally except for the caster is attacked. I mean, it does allow him to stun for 1 turn, right? And then it boosts him if he stuns by 25%. So it's obviously like a good combination, but like it just doesn't thematically seem right for me, especially Sez isn't protecting you, right? It's kind of weird. What does it say? Will be applied in this balance adjustment as many heirs have requested. Sez has demonstrated his performance overpowering enemies by penetrating enemy defense by 100%. However, it is challenging for our heirs to design the right conditions. Blah blah blah. With the adjustments, Specimen Sez will continuously contribute to the battle even in the early phase when it's not his turn. Yeah, it does make sense in terms of playability, but it's kind of weird thematically. But I guess what it will do is just allow you to self-stun by himself and then just destroy that person that's stunned after, right? Because he does boost his CR as well. Huh, okay. Interesting. So first, when the skill Lightstorm can be used, each time an ally except the caster is attacked, it'll have a 20% chance to counterattack with the basic skill. If it activates a counterattack, successfully stuns, he will immediately take 25%. Additionally, if this skill defeats an enemy, the cooldown resets and lets him deliver another counterattack. So that's pretty sweet. I'm not sure how he's going to be built now, but I'm really interested to find out. Like, you might be able to build him more as like a semi-bruiser DPS because he does boatloads of damage every time I fought him, right? So perhaps self-stunning is going to allow him to do that a little bit more. On to Kawerik. So it now dispels 2 buffs instead of 1 buff. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. And Dimensional Explosion. Silences for 1 turn before granting stealth to the caster for 2 turns and penetrates defense. And it also gets rid of the must-have speed on it. So that's a pretty good buff as well. Again, I have no idea how this is going to impact him. I've never used him. I've never seen him. Do I have him? I honestly don't know. I think I have him. But I have no... Not that I don't have interest in using him. I really like Kawerik. I just don't have Molagoras, unfortunately. And usually somebody who does like massive damage like this and has all sorts of stuff just really needs the Molas, so I kind of have set them aside. So, first upon using Dimensional Corridor... I really just want to read Haste. First, upon using Dimensional Corridor, Kawerik will now dispel 2 buffs from the enemy so that our heirs can find it easier to use Kawerik's Dimensional Corridor when facing enemies with more than 1 debuff. Furthermore, Conditional Defense Pen on Dimensional Explosion will be applied by default. This skill can now penetrate 30% of all defense, inflict silence, and grant stealth. Yeah, that stealth is massive for 2 turns as well. That's actually pretty big of a buff. I'm not sure how good it'll be, but let's read this. So this is Haste here. Envoy's Scythe attacks with an enormous scythe with a 60% up, so up 20% to inflict bleeding for 2 turns. Also steals 1 buff if the target is an Earth Elemental hero. Okay. Healing buffs is pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. But very limited at the same time. Bloodrend here. Let's just look at the Awaken one. Attacks the enemy with the scythe, making them unhealable and inflicting Vamp Touch for 2 turns and recovers the health of all allies. Amount recovered increases proportionate to damage dealt. So it just takes away the condition of having to be bleeding. So that's not much. And then Vamp Seal attacks all enemies with Envoy's Scythe with an 100% chance up from 75, so 25% boost. Chance each to inflict 3 bleeding effects for 2 turns. Okay, so that's just a 25% chance. And then detonates any bleeding effects inflicted on earth elemental targets at the end of the turn. Okay. Huh. So, I don't think this is what people want. The problem with this and the problem with Carmen Rose right now is that units like this are built primarily for PvE. You know, like Carmen Rose should be exceptional in places where you use fire against earth. Haste, now that they steal buffs, should be exceptional in places that use fire against earth. But the problem, the biggest... Sorry, I don't want to rant about this, but I think it's really important to kind of convey. The biggest problem, I think, like the deep-seated problem with this game, if there is a problem like that, is the fact that there really is no place to use stuff in PvE. You know, like if we're going to use something that steals 1 buff if the target is an earth elemental hero, it's going to be in giants, right? Or golems, sorry. And that's basically it. There's not many other places I can think of, and it doesn't even matter using it there. So one thing I really want to see them do in 2021 is try to make the PvE more important somehow, and I'm not sure how they're going to do that. To give you an example of this, I know this game isn't Summoner's War. They're very similar, but I know it's not the same. But if a unit like this comes out in Summoner's War, I'm excited because I can use it here, I can use it there, I can make my run faster. It matters if my run's faster. I can get my success rate up a little bit higher. I can do so many different things because of it. And for here, you can't really do anything extra, especially in PvE. In PvP, it probably opens up some opportunities, but his skill set and other people, I'm not just talking about him, but other people like Carmen Rose's skill set, kind of lean towards that PvE aspect. So, one of the things I would actually like to see them do in the future is rotate elements on the hunts, and that will kind of patch stuff. Like, for example, Wyvern 14 comes out eventually, maybe slightly more drops, maybe not, but it will have the Wyvern as earth instead of water, so you kind of have to use fire units instead. So that's just kind of... I just want PvE to matter more. Like, is this a me experience? Are you folks feeling this as well? Because I look at so many kits, and Haste especially, somebody that heals the team, does tons of debuffs, now steals buffs, bleeds, does a ton of damage, should theoretically be really good. It should theoretically, like, there should be a place for him in this game. Anyways, let's read a little bit lower. Haste will be improved so that he can better perform against earth elemental enemies. The chance of inflicting bleeding effects by his skill Vamp Seal will also increase. Yeah, that's another good thing, getting his rates up. So previously could inflict a max 3 bleeding effects. However, through this balance adjustment, under the assumption that Haste attacks 4 enemies, the chances will become 100% along with a maximum of 12 bleeding effects. Okay, so I misread that as well. So that's Vamp Seal, right? Oh, chance each to randomly inflict 3 bleeding effects among the enemies versus 3 bleeding effects for 2 turns, just each. So that's a massive buff to his skill 3 IMO. So that's really good. Okay, let's talk about Yuna. So upgrade now acquires 3 focus instead of 2. Cool. And Meteor Cannon grants an extra turn. I'm confused. If you're gonna... So one of the problems I had with Yuna when I used her way back when is that upgrade, while it's really good, attack and speed for 2 turns is great, it felt really lackluster to use on somebody who's probably being used for DPS. So for me, throwing grants an extra turn onto upgrade feels like a way better way to make her useful, right? Allow her to self-buff and do damage. Like, she doesn't do... Actually, she does pretty great damage, but a lot of people do that now. I'm interested to see how this goes. This will obviously allow her to blow people up with Meteor Cannon and then skill 1 right after just to do a boatload of damage. So that's probably pretty sweet. And I'm not sure what her damage is like right now anyway. So I'm not sure what to say about that, but so Yuna will be adjusted in terms of increasing the amount of focus. That's good as well. Through this adjustment, she'll become more readily available to gain focus in order to use Meteor Cannon, and upon using Cannon, she can better utilize the additional turn for a cycle of attacks. Therefore, she will also be more readily used in content where non-attack skills are required. Okay, that makes a lot more sense too, because this is going to allow her to be useful in that place that's only Katie's Hunt that I haven't even stepped into now and stuff like that. Isn't the element of that one boss that requires you to use a non-attack skill fire or earth, so you're not going to be able to use her there? That's kind of unfortunate. I see where they were going with that though. So Spirit Tieria releases condensed energy at all enemies, recovering health of the caster. Okay, yeah, so remember what I was saying? If she was just a little bit better, a little bit more AoE, she would be much better for the early game, and this is perfect. That's exactly what they needed to do. Now she's going to be a fantastic farmer. Everybody gets her at plus 15. She does pretty solid damage as well. Really happy about this change, and this will really help a lot of early players. So Silk. Silk was a very early game PvP monster. She was on every team way back then. So gains 1 focus at the start of the turn and consumes 1 focus when attacked. Increases in combat readiness by 15%. Okay, and then just a damage increase. I don't think this is going to do enough, but a damage increase is a damage increase. Why couldn't you be Kawana? So I don't even know what he does, so let's read here. So, before, he attacks the enemy with a ball of flame with a 50% chance to burn. Now he attacks with a ball of flame with a 50% chance to decrease defense for 2 turns. And after attacking, has a 35% chance to activate Burning Vitality. And Burning Vitality increases combat readiness by 20%. So instead of burning, he now defense downs and goes up to 100% if you soul burn. And a 35% chance of a 20% CR boost. Interesting. And now Composure, when the caster is debuffed after being attacked, dispels all debuffs and increases the attack of the caster for 2 turns, can only be activated once every 3 turns. Max 2 turns, so once every 2 turns then? After Molagora or something like that? Composure before will be adjusted to be more clear in the sequence of activation. There are no functional changes. Oh, okay. Okay, so Khawazu will be adjusted so that he can perform better in content where non-attack skills are necessary. Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking there. They seem to be doing stuff like this a little bit more because they're trying to get Katie's to be a little more accessible for those who weren't really following. The reason why we don't have Katie's 11 or 12 and 13 is because it was too hard, and they thought people would not like it being too hard. And so they just didn't give it to us. So they're trying to add more stuff that helps for that. And Khawazu will help against that expedition because he is fire, but I'm not sure how much. So defense down, though, that's fantastic, especially for expedition bosses and stuff. So Captain Rikoris here. Pexel enemies, 75% chance to dispel 1 buff from the target. Before a 75% chance to restrict. Okay, so they're giving Rikoris restrict. Captain Rikoris will be adjusted so that he can better fight enemies who constantly increase their CR upon using Supreme Spear. Okay, I'm not sure what to think about this. I don't think this is a big enough change, but restrict has proven to be interesting, but not super amazing, but still good. Also, I think one of the reasons why restrict is even good on Cerise is because she's so fast. to go ahead of somebody else that would speed buff, right? Whereas Captain Rikoris isn't going to be that fast to be able to do that. So, interesting. We'll see how that goes. And now, Flower Shower increases effectiveness by 14% when an enemy is defeated. Increase attack of the caster for 2 turns. Okay, so this just gives it unconditionally and gives her a little bit of effectiveness for her defense break as well. Okay, so those are the balance patch notes. So interesting. Briar Witch Iseria giving her a immortality buff, which seems pretty sweet, and upgrading her rates. Specimen Sez seems like a nightmare to fight now. Looking through this list, I feel like that's a really good buff. I haven't seen his base stats or anything like that, but I feel like that has to be really solid, right? Having that chance to counterattack basically all the time. You're basically giving him, what percent is it? What percent? It's 25%, right? 20%. You're basically giving him an Elbrus, right? Imagine Elbrus on a thief who can also use other artifacts, who can also stun and also does 1 billion damage and CR boost. Like, this is gonna be nuts, right? Like, that feels really, really good. I don't have him. I've never seen him, but that feels like it's really good. Kawerik seemed interesting, but I don't think it was enough. Haste, I'm unsure. We'll kind of see how these fire versus earth things sort of work. I really want to see more PvE to see him worthwhile. Like, I honestly, like, I thought Haste had a really good kit. I still do. I think previous Haste had a really good kit, really good for PvE, but we just didn't have that content. Yuna change is a pretty great change, but not sure if it's enough. Tieria's fantastic change for early game players. Silk is like you could have done a lot with your 4-star covenants, and that's what you chose to do. I feel like that's a little bit lacking. Like, I feel like if you're targeting 4-star covenants like this, you should target ones that are borderline used already and make them better at what people are trying to use them for. For example, what's a good for example here? For example, Crozet, I guess? Because some people try to use Crozet in Wyvern 13, right? So I feel like you should use these buffs to make somebody like Crozet a lot better in Wyvern, which is what people are trying to use them for a lot of times, especially newer players, and kind of help them out that way. Instead of doing like minor changes to somebody like Silk, who nobody really uses and nobody's going to use after. If you're going to change somebody like Silk, you should give them a massive change so that people have ideas of where to use her and when to use her now and want to use her. But those small changes isn't enough to get somebody to Molagora her and really give her a shot. Khawazu is the same. I don't think it's enough of a change for Khawazu, because I don't see where I'd use them. Like the expedition possibly, but I don't want to keep bringing up Molagora. I know people hate it when I do, but that's a valid thing when you're trying to build somebody for an expedition that you don't really need to build for. Interesting. And Captain Rikoris, I feel kind of the same. I don't think this is changing too many people's minds on Rikoris, although maybe there's some niche areas that will really allow him to be used. And Flower Shower, pretty great change as well. So yeah, kind of interesting balance patch. I'm not disappointed by any stretch, especially since Briar Witch Iseria and Specimen Sez are both fantastic additions to this, and I think Spec Sez is standout here. Like, that has to be, the more I think about that has to be nuts. Like, when I first reacted to that, I was more like confused as to why Sez would be counterattacking, you know, like lore wise. I think lore like an idiot, okay? This isn't gonna get me to use Kawerik. This might get me to use Haste, but probably not. Again, specifically, I'm sorry, just because I do not have the resources to use him. And because he has 3 active skills and a lot of debuffs, you need a ton for him to really work. Yuna, I can't see using now because of that either. Perhaps if I could use her and Katie's 13 later when it's out if I really need to. Definitely not Tieria because I just don't need that on my account. Definitely not Silk, definitely not Khawazu, and I don't think this is gonna make me pull out Rikoris. So, let me know what you think. I'm often wildly wrong on some of these. Which one am I wrong on this time? I was definitely wrong on T-Surin way back when. I thought it was a good buff, but I didn't think it was enough. So is there anybody I'm thinking like that for now? Spec Sez. I'm scared of Spec Sez now. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe as always, and I'll talk to you later. Bye, everybody.